Hello, everyone. Yes, you can all see me now. I can't see you, but I'm seeing both in the chat and in the list of attendees a lot of very familiar faces. We are coming to you live. It's 8 p.m. in the Netherlands. It is from the perspective of all of our different presenters, all over the world, all over the time zones. We even have someone, maybe not the only one, for who it's in the middle of the night watching this, and we appreciate your dedication, Ivan. It's 2 a.m. in Indonesia. First of all, let me introduce myself to all of you, for those of you who do not know me. My name is Floor Kaspers, and I am one of the people behind the Tucson Bead Symposium. With me is Peter, who I'm going to be pulling into the screen. Now, this is Peter. Peter is my sweetheart who doesn't care at all about beads, but he does really... No. But he does really enjoy bead people, and that's one of the main reasons why he also is joining me in hosting the Bead Symposium, because bead people are awesome, and interestingly enough, over 300 people have signed up to join this online Tucson Bead Symposium. So that's a lot, and I think that probably comes from a lot of you missing Tucson, missing traveling, missing chatting with other bead people, meeting up. Before we start with the presentations that we have, I wanted to say a few things. First of all, if you have any questions for the presenters, you are best off using the Q&A for that. In most of your versions, that will be on the bottom of your screen. You can see a Q&A, and you can post questions there, and I will use those questions to ask to our presenters after their presentation. You can also use the chat, but that's mostly to talk amongst yourself, because with so many attendees, there's no way for me as a host to actually follow the whole chat. Do be aware, if you're using the chat, you have the option to chat with just the panelists. I suggest you don't use that. And you have the option to chat with everyone. That means all attendees and all panelists. So we have someone here who says the screen is black. I am assuming that unless we hear the same from everyone, other people do not have a black screen. So I am sorry, Elaine, you are on your own. You're going to have to figure this one out by yourself. Good luck. A few more important words. Oh, there's more people who have a black screen. Let's see what's going on there. So we have several people who have a black screen and other people who can see just fine. I suggest you you refresh, or in your upper right hand, left hand, I'm not very good at that, you see if you can change it to speaker view, or just log out and go again. So anyway, we decided to do the online Tucson Bead Symposium, even though we are not in Tucson, we are in Amsterdam, because it's important for people to share their love of beads, share the inspiration of beads, come together, because I think inherently working with glass, making beads, studying beads, and also doing beadwork is inherently a social activity. You need to share it with each other to get inspiration, and to get new ideas. So even though we are unable to do that in person, we are now doing that to you online and live, and with a lot more people than we could actually fit in if we were to have a live symposium. We have the Tucson Bead Symposium was originally started by Ornament Magazine, and they are still supporting the symposium. And it has also for the last few years been hosted by the Sonoran Glass School, who have also been a great supporter of all things glass and all things beads. So a big thank you to them. And the same goes to the Ethnographic Group. And we will be providing links to them at the end of the symposium. Now, I will go to a few practical messages, and I will do that by sharing my screen again with you right here. And there we are. So I've already said this, welcome to the Bead Symposium. Just imagine, it seems very old fashioned, it seems really weird now, but that all of you, all hundreds of you are squashed into this little room, sharing all your bead knowledge together. So this is actually a picture from last year's Bead Symposium. So again, a few more of the practical things already mentioned. Some of them, the chat is open for you, the Q&As for questions to the presenters. You can share information in the chat, say you have an interesting thing to add, please do that, but no commercial links for that. We are recording this symposium and we will be sharing it online. It's going to be quite late and tonight when we finish, so it won't be straight up. It'll take us a while to get it edited and everything, but it will be available. Also, even though we're not in a physical location, there are costs involved with planning and organizing symposium, for example, for using the webinar software from Zoom. So in previous years, we have asked for a $5 donation to enter the symposium. Please do not feel like you have to, don't feel obliged. However, if you do have the ability to contribute to the costs of this symposium and possible future symposiums, you can use the link that we just put up in the chat, which is a PayPal link to give a small donation if possible. So without further ado, I am going to start with our first presenter. And this is our first presenter is actually how I came to know about Marisa Convento from Venice. Is that I was in Venice 3 years ago for the Glass Art Conference, and I was doing research for a book I'm working on. I've been working on it for ages. It will not be finished soon. Please don't ask me. And I was sitting down with a great bead maker from Murano, Alessia Fuga, and I kept asking her all these questions about beads in Venice and the history. And even though she had great answers, don't get me wrong, she kept saying, you have to talk to Marisa. Marisa Convento knows all the answers. So my plane left after I talked to Alyssa, so I never got around to chatting with Marisa. So now you have the amazing opportunity to actually sit in the type of conversation I wanted to have with Marisa, all the questions I wanted to ask her, because she is a bead stringer, which is a simple term. It sounds much cooler in Italian, I have to say. It's Impieraressa Veneziana. Sounds pretty cool to me. And she both works with vintage seed beads herself, and she has worked really hard in getting recognition for the bead culture in Italy and the bead culture in France. And she'll explain all of that to us in a bit. So I am going to ask Marisa to put your camera on and join us, and put your sign on if you haven't. So welcome, Marisa.
Thank you, Flo, and I'm very honored to be with all of you. I'm very emotional, sorry, and it's a great pleasure, a great honor to be with you. And I thank you, Flo and Peter, for having organized this. Buonasera a tutti.
Explain to me, why is it emotional for you to sit here and talk about beads with us?
Well, you know, I started many years ago playing with beads. And when I started more than 30 years ago, there wasn't any publication in Venice about beads, strangely, but true. So the first things that I read about beads when I wanted to be, you know, more to get more knowledge, more international knowledge about the bead and the bead people, as you said before, the only option was to get some publication from America. and I used to get Ornament magazine among the others. And so for me tonight, you know, it's like homecoming.
It is. I remember the first time I had an article published in Ornament magazine that I wrote, and it was like, this is the big magazine, and I'm in it now.
So you understand me, Flo. You
I
understand me well.
I do understand. Can you share a bit with us how you started your journey with beads?
I started many years ago, as I told you before. I started maybe more than 30 years ago when I was in my late 20s. And I started, grazie. Uh, she, someone is commenting about my eyeglasses, but they are not made of glass. I started because I wanted to collect beads, and I wanted to know more about the beads that I was collecting, and also I needed money to buy more beads. So I started getting as gifts the little conterie, the seed beads, because of course they were largely uh, produced here in Venice up to the end of the 80s. And so I actually, started getting informed how to use the seed beads. And gradually, we say in Venezia, you ruba con gli occhi, you steal with the eye. So I started stealing with the eye, and I learned gradually how to work with beads and seed beads.
Okay, so I have a few pictures that Marisa gave me that I will share with you, and Marisa will explain about what we're actually seeing. So get the right one. There we go. So ignore this one. So this is the first picture, and as someone who works with glass, I know exactly what this picture means, but I'm pretty sure it's not that obvious for everyone. So this is an explanation of how seed beads are actually made. Could you explain it?
Yes. Allora, first of all, I think that I suppose that many of you know already that there are two different major categories of beads, and we are talking about beads that are made by wrapping glass around a piece of metal, and those are the lampwork beads. They can be of many different types. And the seed beads instead, the seed beads that were made in Venice up to the 80s of the past centuries, instead were made by pulling, extending a cane of glass, a piece of glass that was, first of all, practically they used to do these, blow the glass, so take a piece of molten glass from the oven, blow it so that they would create a cavity inside, and then extend that sort of cylinder with the help of metal stick that had a little bit of the glass on top. And literally they would do like when we were kids and we used to play with the chewing gum, they would extend the molten glass until they reached the wanted size, the wanted diameter. That could be very, very small, like 1 or 2 millimeters. So literally, this is the work as it was described in the 19th century. And it's the same that is done now. If possibly they were making beads, seed beads, still in Venice, but unfortunately in the island, at the island of Murano, they don't produce the seed beads anymore. And so the seed beads that you buy now that are actual real Venetian glass are vintage.
We had a request in the chat if you had a chance to set down your phone so it doesn't move.
Okay.
So some people are quite sensitive to
Sorry. Okay,
no problem. And then your first picture showed the making of the beads, and then here the pulling of the beads. And this picture is not very easy to see, but this is the rounding of the beads. Why is that a necessary step?
Allora, the necessary step of rounding the beads take place when the rod is cut in little segments, to obtain the actual seed beads. And of course, you know that when you cut glass is sharp, it's rough on the extremity, so it must be rounded. So if you had a very big bead like a rosetta, you would grind it with an abrasive band. But in the case of the seed beads, which are many, imagine kilos and kilos and kilos, you need to do that in a sort of barrel that actually sort of round up with the heat the little segments that become then round spherical beads. But before that, they must be prepared with a sort of paste that avoid them to implode on themselves to fuse together. Otherwise, they would become, as they say in Venice, orbe, blind, no hole, no perforation, no good for stringing.
And then talking about the stringing,
Yeah.
you sent us some really interesting pictures.
Yeah.
So if I do bead stringing, like making making a necklace, I use one needle and one thread, and this was very different.
Allora, the use of bead stringing with several different needles was needed because the bead stringers, the so-called impiraresse veneziane, didn't string for creating a work of art like we do today, but their work was required for stringing the beads, the little beads, in bundles, so that they could be more easily taken elsewhere. The merchants, the explorers, the missionaries taking around the seed beads to be traded with something else in the far lands, they used to bring the tiny seed beads already strung for three different reasons. For being sure that the beads were good, so all of them perforated, for for also the practical reason of not spilling the tiny beads everywhere, because imagine spilling, for example, a crate of 90 kilos of these beads around, and actually you spend your entire life picking them up. And also to have an unity of measure, so that actually, for example, they knew that a bunch like these was about half a kilo, for example. Plus, you can undo the knotting on top and divide that quantity in smaller quantities. It's like changing your bill, because actually these beads were, as you know, used as money.
Yeah. And then you, I think one of the things that was interesting in what you've been working on is to also show the social aspect of bead stringing. This was a woman's job, right? Most of the work in the factory making these beads, I presume, was men's work. Making lampwork beads was a lot of women's work.
Yes.
And also stringing the beads was also women's work. What can you tell us about how that worked? Would they get paid by the kilo? Would it be done with the kids running around?
Actually, this was exactly as you said, Flo, women's work, and it was mostly done at home. That's why even the artists between 1800 and 1900 depicted always ladies staying outside or in the courtyards of Venice, doing this job for, rounding up the budget, the family budget. And also, this is this is a Dutch artist. And you can see here, for example, the little girl helping or each other, probably, getting taught by the older woman. And, you have some younger ladies there, and they used to sing and chat and spend entire days. They were paid by the bundle strung. So it was really a very poor job. And it's calculated that in a full day of work, they could probably earn no more than the cost of a bag of bread. So it's really a work that wasn't paid well. And on top of that, there was a lady called Mistra or Maestra, which means the boss, literally, that used to she used to be like a person in charge of distributing the kilos of beads to the ladies in the neighborhood, and she was responsible with the glass furnace where the beads were made, in returning them in a week time already strung before they arrived with another load of beads to be strung again. So it was, very, very poor life, but the work they used to do used to make a great difference.
So that's on how to prepare the beads for being sold.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then of course, the stringing to. So this is a more recent picture. So it's not just all ancient history.
No, let's say
1960s.
Yeah, it's probably late 1960s, 68, 67. And this is Calle dei Preti, which is a little street, a little calle nearby the Arsenale of Venice. You know that the Arsenale of Venice is the place where the ships were built during the Serenissima Republic. And that area always has been very popular in the sense of lots of people there living because of the workers, the caulkers and the carpenters working in the Arsenale, which was, as I said, the shipbuilding district of Venice. So all of these ladies are mothers, daughters, or wives of those people working in the Arsenale. And, in certain periods, the Arsenale wasn't working that much. So the ladies used to make their job at home while attending the family things.
So this is a different type of bead stringing. We are now moving on to all the beautiful things you could make with the beads. This is an example. Where's this example from?
Allora, this is a Cree saddle, and it's actually a Cree saddle. It's a photo that I have taken from that beautiful book, The History of Beads, from Garzanti. I think all of you possess that book. And it's the saddle from this guy named Yellow Horse. And as you can see, it's a beautiful example of the use of the Venetian glass seed beads. There is to say that only recently, people using the Venetian glass beads around the world actually understood where those beads used to come from. And even the impierarese, the bead stringers, when they were stringing the beads, they didn't know where the beads were going. So it's a beautiful example of shared intangible culture. And this is an example of a bag, a beaded bag from the last quarter of 1800s, so 1870, 1880. And it describes the island of Mazzorbo, which is one of the tiny islands in the lagoon of Venice. These beaded bags, which, very popular all over the world, were made also as souvenirs. I recently learned that they were sometimes made also in Austria or in Germany to be sold in Venice as souvenirs.
Smart.
Yeah, very smart. And these are the beaded flowers, of course. The beaded flowers are very popular everywhere, and they have been being made in Venice, of course. And then they became very, very popular in France too, because in America, for example, they are known as the French beaded flowers, because in France they became very, very popular. They became popular after two sisters, the sister Dorigo, at the beginning of 1900, went to France and taught other people to how to do the beaded flowers. And then the beaded flowers became very, very popular in France.
So I'm going to go a little bit faster through some of yours because I want to see a little bit more before we run out of time, because you have
Yes.
so many wonderful stories to share with us. So this is you in your work area.
Yes, exactly. This is me in my work area at Bottega Cini. It's where I work now. It's a new concept store where I am actually a resident artisan.
And then this is one of your examples. It's quite a traditional work, isn't it?
Yes, my idea of working with beads, it's really these working with the traditional methods, so still using the long needles and the stringing with the metal, like to make the flowers, but in order to create something more contemporary.
Okay, and then here is another example.
See, this is another example because I have tried them through the years also with cooperating, with, for example, with this company that makes shoes, luxury shoes, to incorporate the beading in the traditional way in something really modern, even very fashionable. And I think it's the way of, keeping the heart alive now.
And then I have an example of you combining two very traditional things about Venice, the Carnevale.
See, the Carnevale, yes.
And the beadwork. So
But let's say that this was a challenge for me because I knew how to embroider with beads, but I never tried a very big project like this. And I was asked in 2016 to cooperate with the making of a beautiful 18th century style dress, and I did the stomacher, an embroidered stomacher in 18th century style with the
the same
beads.
piece, right?
See, it's all made of beads, and it's all made of Venetian glass beads. So I really tried using all the beads I had, all the different sizes and colors and shapes. And it took a couple of months, but it was a nice satisfaction then.
So that is a pretty amazing set of pictures and stories that you had to share. And there is one more main questions that I wanted to ask you. And for all of the people listening in and watching, this is also your time to get any questions that you have for Marisa into the Q&A to share that with us. So you've been working on getting recognition from the UN for the what is called intangible
It's called, yes, we have been working together with the French community of the Perliers d'Art de France, the art bead makers of France. We asked and obtained from UNESCO to have the art of the glass beads, so the art of making the beads and making with the beads among the intangible protected by UNESCO. So the art of the glass beads is now one of the intangibles, immaterial cultural heritage.
Okay. So congratulations.
Grazie.
That must have been a lot of hard work to get that, but I do think
Yes.
it's fascinating in this time. There's also there's often talk of bead culture being in decline, but I think an example like this also shows that it's very much alive and very much deserves recognition around the world.
Absolutely.
We have
Absolutely.
we have a few questions coming in. One of the questions is, when did the bead production start in Venice?
Allora, the bead production in general started around the 14th century, so really long time ago. The technical way of making, the techniques for making the beads, of course, changed a lot. If we talk about the seed beads, probably the seed beads as we know them from the 18th century on, the lampwork beads had a very big expansion during the colonial period, so between 1800 and 1900. And it's a huge story. it's really a huge story.
We have put a link in the chat to a publication on bead stringing, which Peter had mentioned is a publication by Marisa, but it's not a publication by you, but
No.
I'm sure...
it's a very ancient essay written by Irene Ninni and this lady in 1800. So it's a very, very old issue. They actually describe the work of the bead stringers back then. And it's very well translated, so you can rely on it.
And we also have a question about the size of seed beads. And I have seen Venetian seed beads that look like grains of sand. I think 22 is like or 20, there's tiny, tiny, tiny beads.
Allora, let's say that the Italian sizes are completely different from the American sizes, or, you know, when we talk about sizes, it's really hard for me to compare those I use all different sizes. The very, very tiny ones, those that we used to call polvere, powder, or le perle del prete, the beads of the priest, because those were the, you know, they have been produced for a very, very short time, also because, you know, they're quite impossible to string. They're very, very difficult to string. I use all different sizes myself because I don't actually do the work like Nico or like you, Floor. So I don't really need my beads to be a specific size or to be totally even. The Venetian glass seed beads are quite irregular.
And we have a few more questions, but I don't think we have to move on to the next because we've already been listening to you for too long.
See you later if you want.
Yeah, I have you can stay on for a bit, but we have a question about snake beads. Snake beads are actually beads that were not made in Venice. I happen to know this because I wrote about bead making in the Czech Republic. They are molded beads that were specially made both in France and in the Czech Republic. So they are not made in Venice because Venice made the seed bead and Venice made the lampwork beads, with a few exceptions, but still. So that's also one of the differences between the Venetian beads and the Czech beads. When it comes to the seed beads, they're very similar, but sometimes different colors and different sizes. And
also, you recognize the Venetian glass seed beads also because they're quite irregular.
Yeah, and sometimes the Czechs are too, but not always. But they're very different, for example, from the Japanese beads. Very different. And we also have a question, but we don't have time to go into that now, but we will save it. So maybe you can get into it in a later time on how to clean an item that had seed beads on it, because that is a very difficult question to answer and we won't have time for that. So Marisa, for now, I'm going to say thank you very much.
Grazie. Thank you.
And we will be in touch, and you get to now relax and watch all the other presentations.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Grazie mille. Buonasera. Buonasera.
Bye. So we are now going to go to our next presenter, which is Natalie Kotas, who is from France. So we're still staying in Europe for now, not for long, but we are now staying in Europe. And Natalie's been making glass beads for 10 years. And what I was immediately attracted to her work when I saw her work in the UK in 2019, because some of you, not all of you, may know some of the work that I do with making glass beads and making glass components. And I immediately saw that she looked at beads in a similar way that I do, that it can be used for so much more than just for jewelry. It can be used for sculpture. It can be used to make people explore glass and rhythms and patterns in a different way. So I'm very glad that she is able and willing to share with us her story about glass bead making in France. So I'm going to ask Natalie to, Natalie, can you put on your camera so we can see you and turn on your sound? There you are. And unmute yourself. So welcome, Natalie.
Yes, hello everyone.
So I'm going to ask everyone, the number of languages that is spoken between the group of presenters that we have here, I think it's more than a dozen languages all put together. So we're all trying to do English for the vast majority of people who is listening. So now you have to switch from Dutch accent English with a bit of British and a bit of American thrown in, to an Italian English accent, to a French English accent. I know you can do it, people. This is like a trip around the world. So Natalie, without any further introduction, I'm going to ask you to start your presentation.
Yes, so I'm sharing the screen. So, yeah, it's okay for everyone? No?
Yeah, and you want to start?
Oh yeah, okay, I have to do this. Okay.
Perfect.
So, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And I will share my journey from a French point of view. It means that I truly think that my way of creating glass beads and creating art with glass beads has been very influenced by the history and the way we see the glass beads in France. So I will have pleasure to share it with you tonight. So here it's me. And I like to say that I am a flame worker and that I am specialized in the glass bead making. And because making beads is very various, so I don't want to be too close with the way I call myself. So I live in France in the suburb of Paris, and my studio always has been here. And recently I've moved in the north of Paris, so I have to find a new place to work. Here it's my bench, and it's the same place where I work since 10 years, and I like to keep it very clear. So I work on different approaches, and I like to work on and to split my approaches. So I like to work my beads with very complex design and to build them as collectible glass beads. And then on the other end, I have a jewelry brand where I like to work the glass more simply. I also teach since 5 years, and with the time I've discovered a lot of stuff around teaching, and now I want to share my work in a very holistic way with all the ritual we can have for taking care of our artistic health. So what is very interesting for you is to discover my true journey with the glass bead making. So I will share all of this. I discovered the glass bead making in France with this book, and it literally appears in my life and by magic. So it was very surprising for me to discover that we can do beads at home and work the glass at home. And by magic also, I was surprised to discover that 5 minutes from my own house, there were L'Âge du Verre, where I could took my first training classes there. So you have to imagine that 10 years ago, be a bead maker was very rare, and I've never met a glass bead maker before. So it was amazing, and I took this as a sign of the universe for me to make glass beads. So here is my picture of the first beads I've made, and I wanted to share it with you because this one has a particular impact on the rest of my journey for making glass beads. So 3 years after my first beads, I started to take very seriously my vision of glass bead making, and I wanted to really connect with people in the community. So I started to go on the only one event we have at this moment in the north of France, and I've met Sage Holland, and I've understood that truly some people were traveling the world to share their passion, and I found very amazing that it could be possible. And yeah, so I've started to be more connected with people, making friends, and started to develop a certain taste for the collaboration. And since I enjoy make some collaboration with other glass artists and other professions. And also, as I took very seriously my way of create, I started to be more involved in the community. So I joined the French Association of the Glass Bead Maker. And I've seen that glass bead was not the only things that we could do with flame work. So there were sculptures, pipe making, scientific glass blowing, and I truly wanted to make the glass beads in France more known. And for this, I create an association with other people to create all these links interdisciplinary. So the French community, their history, and the glass bead community has truly influenced me for the roots of the glass bead making in France, and also for other stuff. And I would like to talk to this before showing you my work. So in the L'Âge du Verre, where I took my first classes, I discovered that people were truly passionate about glass bead making to become collectors of glass from all around the world. I discovered that the place of the glass beads were very unexpected, like here on the funerary art, as we have seen with Marisa for the beaded flowers. So it's nice to see the correspondence, the resonance between Italia and France. And I've discovered that, in fact, glass bead making in France was very popular for the fashion industry. And I recently met Caroline, who is the granddaughter of Louis Rousselet. And she asked me why I used glass bead making and glass bead for sculpture and not just for fashion fancy jewelries. And to me, it's just because of the fact that during the period of industrial glass bead making, the people who were making the beads were workers, and they were doing glass beads, in 1 minute, 1 minute for making a glass beads. And now, as the glass bead making is becoming a hobby, we could have much more time to create and to make new stuff around the glass bead making and the techniques. So it changed the way we work the glass and we do glass beads, because people now do glass beads by putting their soul and their personality in the glass bead making. So I truly believe that glass bead can be so much more than just a bead for a jewelry, and that's why I'm doing different things. So here, because the glass beads has become something different, we can be happy that it is now recognized as intangible cultural heritage by the UNESCO. But what inspired me the most in my artistic research work so far are the deeper roots and the closer to my state of mind and my spirituality. And now I'm starting to show you my work. So as you can see, the first bead I made was very like the ancient glass beads we can find in the Viking or Merovingian period. And it's a good representation of what people teach me for my first classes. And several years after this, I try again to do it, and I find that I could do so much more fine and delicate lines with this technique. So I thought maybe I'm not an artist that can create new design, but maybe I can reveal the beauty of the old by making more delicate design. And then I started to work the line, and I've never stopped. And it's truly something I like to do. And so you can see the Viking inspiration with the shield. And yes, what I wanted to say is that I like to put a perfect line and then try to destroy this, or gently destroy it, this making distortion by moving the line with the work with the flame or the alchemy of glass. I like to twist the lines with the gravity of my tools. I like to create layers of lines. And I also like to use simple beads to create a weird kind of art. And I'm also known for this kind of weird creation. Like I started to use the simple beads to communicate with people in the community, and in fact with my students. I like to use old objects, French objects, and to add beads, string of beads, and it was here to say that to try to make the thing perfectly, we have to repeat again and again to be able to do it. So in the same way, I did several other weird sculptures. And as I learned photography during 6 years before making glass beads, I like to use the photography to use the beads and create other stuff. And I like to make more surrealist stuff, and make and showing my beads like that. And I use photography also to communicate again with the community. Like during 10 years that I made glass beads, I've learned that sometimes we can feel a bit, without inspiration. And I wanted to show that with one color, we can do so many other beads. So yes, I like to use the beads to symbolize the connection between two people, or to make a link with the past by using an old piece of glass and simply making beads and keeping the spirit of it. And all of this show that the community and the history of beads make some prints so on the history of the beads. So I explored also working with the glass by using the glass beads to impact the paint and create something different. So art for the community, I like the idea of putting intention into my art and creating positivity through the messages that I try to share. I think that I can say I am a conceptual glass bead artist because I use the glass bead in a different way. And I've created these sculptures maybe 3 years ago to symbolize the history of the glass bead making, the fact that glass bead maker has truly gold in the end. I truly wanted to use the mandrel to represent the fact that it's a knowledge producing by humans, and it's amazing. And I wanted to really symbolize this through the sculptures. And as you can see, the work with the line, this is my latest work, and I work on an alignment of glass beads. And as you can see, I truly perfected the techniques of broken lines. And at the beginning, I wanted to make them very perfectly, but it was, I don't know, a bit strong. And then I realized that the movement and the I don't know how to say, but to add some freedom to the lines could create some emotion. And finally, when we see this final piece, we can see the true movement of the lines. And to me, it's like the community. It's like we are all creating beads. We are all alone in our studio, but we can feel that others do better, or when we are a beginner, we can feel that we could never do something perfect as the most popular bead maker, etc. But in fact, so we feel like that, very separate. But in fact, when we change from perception, we can see things in another way, and we can see that everyone in the bead making community is truly connected, and together we are all creating the history and a beautiful mosaic of glass beads. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much. We are getting a lot of responses, both in the chat and in the questions, of people who are truly admiring your work. I've not seen this whole big piece, but I've seen a smaller version of it. So people were asking what the size of it is, and I said they're probably about 10 centimeters high, the beads.
They are 7 centimeters.
Okay.
Yes, because I like to use the numerology, the symbol of the numbers to create. So I use for this alignment 108 beads, because it's a symbol of sacred number.
And also, for those of you who do not make glass beads or have never tried, making a cylindrical 7 centimeter, which is about a bit under 3 inches, glass bead like this, even without the lines, is very difficult to do. Yeah, that's so from a technical standpoint, but then repeating it, making it into a pattern, and making it have the meaning of joining together a community, I think really shows a beautiful end to your presentation. And it's also fascinating to see, at least that's how it works with me, because I also do often larger scale projects. What is the next thing going to be? I know you've been very busy moving, but do you already have a new plan?
I have lots of ideas to develop the concept of the alignment of glass beads, and I truly want to represent as much as possible the glass bead techniques that we already have created in the past until now. And there is I've worked a lot on the lines, but I think that the taste for the abstract sculptures and abstract form of arts really attract me right now. So I want to use the glass beads to create this kind of creation with glass, but in an abstract way, by using the techniques, the simple techniques that we have in the glass bead making, because I think that at the moment we want always to make more complex, more better, or create new design. But I truly believe that what we already have is already amazing, and we can still, with just one techniques of decoration, create something surprising. And I want to go in this research.
So Natalie and we met, as I said, in the UK. And since then, we've been talking about getting together. So Corona has kind of put that on hold, but hearing you speak, that we really should be getting together and make something and plan something together.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a few more
absolutely.
questions, and then we are going to move on to Hans.
Okay.
One of the questions is from Stephanie from the UK, who said, could they be rods without holes? I could let you answer. I would have an answer too, but because I'm stubborn, but I will let you answer that.
So the question is
could you also make it just cut rods of glass? But then it wouldn't be bead, would it?
I think I could do, but working the glass, the rods of glass, and putting the lines and create the distortion will be tricky, but I think I should try. In fact, I don't know.
Always try. And we have a question from Sherry, who was wondering if what CUE glass it is. It's 104, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then I am going to finish off with some of one of the compliments that somebody gave, that it's like a choreography, that it flows as it moves.
Yes, thank you very much. Some people have told me that it looks like the ocean or the wave of the clouds, and that's what I like with this. It's like it's open the imagination. Oops, I'm sorry. It's open truly the imagination of the pupil, and they truly feel something, and they connect to memories or something. And that's what I found very interesting in this way of showing the glass beads.
So some people are also seeing a heartbeat, other people are seeing music. I'm going to have to let you go. We're moving on to something completely different again. We will be getting together as soon as we're all vaccinated and all of that. And when we're able to travel again, hang around, watch everything else. We've put a link to where they can find more information on you in the chat. And
okay.
We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Do you want me to stop sharing?
I want you to stop the screen sharing.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Thank you, everyone.
So now, and you can also turn off your things. Yeah. So now we are going to turn to something that is both connected and very different again. It's one of those, what can you use beads for? This is a presentation by Hans van der Storm, who is a Dutch friend of mine, who is actually the closest to me at this moment. I'm at Peter's house. He is a mere 10 minutes walking away from us. And he was actually planned to be here with us to give the presentation, or to at least join us. But we realized that we are in a lockdown with a curfew, and we are past 9 p.m. So nobody's allowed to go and leave again. So unless he wanted to spend the night here, which seemed a bit much, he'd be welcome to, but still seemed a bit much. He is at his own place, but we have also recorded his presentation for us. And I consider Hans to be, I'm just going to embarrass him by gushing. I consider him to be the person in the Netherlands who knows the most about beads, more than anyone else. He has researched beads. Let's just say he does his homework. He does amazing photography and design. And any questions that you have about any beads in the Netherlands, he will know so much about them. And if not, he will know exactly in what article you can read more about it. So without further ado, I'm going to let Hans discuss the fascinating subject of what can you do with beads? Well, you can decorate your garden with them. And this is not what you think. It's, well, it is decorating your garden, but still. So,
introduction. Thank you, Floor. I prefer to see myself as a bead freak, and for about 50 years, a modest, curious collector, mainly interested in ethnic beads made outside of Europe, or very old beads. Furthermore, I will hide myself behind this presentation. As announced online, I want to speak about the old Dutch bead gardens that existed in the Netherlands, especially those in the province of North Holland. Most of the Dutch 17th century merchant ships sailed from that area around the oceans. The gardens were inspired by the 17th century French Renaissance gardens. The royal gardens in Versailles, for instance. Some of these gardens had follies. Follies are a kind of fantasy architecture with no direct use, just for fun. They included artificial grottos and fountains to impress and amuse the visitors. These follies were completely decorated with exotic shells and colorful minerals. After the success of trading wheat and rye through the Baltic Sea, the East and West Indian Company were established. The start of lucrative overseas trading with America, Africa and Asia, which a new kind of wealth emerged in the Netherlands. A part of the new middle class, merchants and captains of sailing ships settled in North Holland, close to their warehouses and harbors in Amsterdam and also the island of Texel. The new rich wanted to expose their acquired wealth, but only in a simple don't break way. So they imitated the Renaissance gardens in their own modest way. And instead of the exotic shells and stones, they used big wound glass beads to create mosaics, to bring color in their gardens, especially in grey wintertime. Beads in different shapes and colors were placed in a layer of loose sand. Opaque white and black beads, translucent blue, amber, violet and sometimes green glass. At first, these beads were part of the trading ship's cargo as merchandise. Maybe this kind of beads became out of fashion and not esteemed anymore by critical sellers overseas. So they were taken home again or never left the Dutch warehouses. They had lost their value and recycled as garden decoration. Because beads were only a small part of the ship's load, not many traces can be found in old cargo papers of the trading companies. As far as I know, the only remaining original 19th century bead garden was used as an early tourist attraction by the merchant's daughter Aagje Vregeres in the village Broek in Waterland. There is not much known of historic bead gardens, only that Miss Vregeres inherited the house and garden in 1867 from her father. She furnished the house and made a living from showing the house, including the garden, selling antique to high-ranking rich visitors. It was a famous 19th century attraction. The original house and garden are used today as a pancake restaurant. There was no room for the bead garden anymore, and it was sold to a local historian, Mr. Bruigom, who moved the beads in 1951 to his own garden some 100 yards away. In 1969, the garden was partly destroyed by robbers. The hippie years arrived and beads became fashion. Afterwards, it turned out that most of the stolen beads were sold in the nearby city of Amsterdam. Mr. Bruigom restored his garden with a different pattern because some bead colors were no longer available in sufficient numbers. To prevent the garden would be robbed again, he fastened the beads in cement. Strings of spare beads still intact and owned by a local historic society. After the death of Mr. Bruigom, the current owner of house and garden has put a new layer of cement over the beads, and here you see the sad result. Besides the garden in Broek in Waterland, another bead garden with old beads was reconstructed in 1973 in an open-air museum near the city of Arnhem, where a lot of old Dutch architecture is rebuilt and preserved after the necessary demolition elsewhere. Inspired by these two historic gardens, several new initiatives were undertaken by private persons and other museums. A small private bead garden is made by the family Bouwman in Zaandam. In the year 2000, Miss Bouwman spent a lot of weekends making big ceramic beads in white and blue glaze and fired by a local pottery. Thereafter, the family arranged the beads in concrete in the front yard. Two open-air museums in the North Holland create their own bead gardens. In 1982, a museum in Enkhuizen made a garden inspired by the garden in Broek en Waterland. Beads were ordered in India. In 2013, another bead garden was created in the Zaanse Schans. The designers of this recent garden claimed they studied in advance the beads of Mr. van der Sleen. This Dutch researcher gathered a great collection of beads and wrote a handbook on beads published in 1967. In this book, he had described the beads from the garden in Broek en Waterland. Earlier, the wife of Mr. Bruigom had donated some characteristic beads from their garden to Mr. van der Sleen. These beads were used as an example for the newly made beads. The Zaanse Schans also ordered their beads in India. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot. In the last few years, the myth that the beads showed here are Dutch-made is refuted. The beads used in the bead gardens are furnace-wound beads, mainly made in the Fichtel Mountains in Bayern, Germany. The beads made in the 17th century Netherlands were drawn beads like these. Finally, I want to thank Floor and Peter for inviting me here. Thanks. Nice introduction.
So, thank you very much. I will put my video back on and I will ask Hans to put his video on as well and his sound. Thank you very much, Hans, for that beautiful presentation. We got a fair amount of response to that, both in the chat and in the questions. This was very new to a lot of people. Fascinating. So we have a few questions for you. One of them has to do with, so what's the whole, maybe explain a bit more about the story of how the beads made it there. So they were not made in the Netherlands, but they were intended to be traded to other countries. Some of them were used on the ships and probably came back, and some of them were just held back and never made it onto the ships. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true. Yes. Do you read me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's true. Maybe a lot of the cargo stayed in warehouses, and because the warehouses owned by the merchants, and it was not necessary to hire room. They could leave those beads in the warehouses for a long time. So it was not necessary to make money out of them at once. They were patient and leave them in the warehouses. But yeah, there comes a time it was enough. and then they were dumped in the canals. And yeah, it was the way everybody moves his how you call it, troep, garbage, yeah. And yeah, that's what I can tell about it. I don't know.
And we also have a question of how they were stuck. What you mentioned, so just checking, what you mentioned is the first ones were made, they were just put in sand, so loose in the sand, but after
Yes.
some of them were stolen, when they remade it, they would have them stuck with like cement, like mosaic, have them stuck better on.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have another.
In summertime, some of those gardens were completely taken away to put flowers and other things in it. So a lot of those gardens were only existed in wintertime, when there was no growing in the gardens. There was no green.
Like right now, we could use, because it's just too early for flowers yet, we could use some beads to put in our garden. I think you've given people some ideas. We have one more question, or two more questions that I wanted to ask you, and then we will be moving on, because we are starting to run behind time, because there's just too much interesting stuff in here. So one of the questions is there any specific symbolism in the star design?
No, I don't nothing about it.
No, and I know the one that I photographed in the Open Air Museum in Arnhem, that
Yes.
actually had some symbols on it, which I think might be from the Dutch provinces. But the actual star design, I think, was just to be pretty.
I do think so, yeah, and I do think so. I think that the design was changed all the time.
Someone mentions it might be a compass flower, like a compass. I don't know what that is, so you might very much be right, Laurie. But it's not a compass as such, because I think it had 5 or more. It's not like north, south, east, west.
No.
So people are now thinking we should have Italian seed beads with the French flowers and then make bead gardens. But then, so that's an idea for Sherry, to have all of these 3 presentations combined. But Sherry, you haven't seen the next presentation, so we're going to need your plan for what you want to do after you've seen all of the presentations. So okay. For now, Hans, we are going to let you go. We've put a link in the chat to where they can see some of your beautiful photographs of your bead collection with all the information there. And I especially highly recommend on that page, Hans's Flickr page, to watch all the photographs he's taken of broken beads, the Boulevard of Broken Beads, which is highly educational when it comes to looking at the inside of beads and how they were made. So thank you very much, Hans.
Thank you for joining you. Bye.
Bye. You can turn off your video and your sound.
Yeah, I will.
So after that, there we are. So we have a lot for you, and we are now moving on to a presentation coming to you all the way from Indonesia. So I'm going to ask Ivan to turn his camera on and turn his sound on. And to give you some idea of how I met this wonderful gentleman is I was in Indonesia doing research in Eastern Java, doing research into glass bead making, again for that book that is never going to get finished. And then I was supposed to go to Bali, but there was this thing with the volcano. So instead of going to Bali, we went to Yogyakarta. And I was like, okay, so I'm sure Yogyakarta is cool, but is there any glass bead people here or glass bead makers here? And I found Ivan on Instagram, and someone was like, you should really go see this guy, because I've only seen it online, but it's really cool what he does. So Peter and I got to hang out with Ivan, watch his studio, watch his work. I actually got one of his very special pieces, and by the time you see what Ivan makes, you will you can imagine the odd looks I got when I was trying to carry that piece through hand luggage, and it would go through the scanner, and they would be like, what is this? This does not look familiar to us at all. But I've taken a picture and I would show them the picture so I wouldn't have to unwrap this precious piece of glass art that I had. So, Ivan, I'm going to ask you, in the middle of the night, you still look very much awake.
Yep.
I'm going to ask you to start your presentation for us.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Let me start to share my screen. Wait. First of all, thank you for this amazing amazing opportunity to give presentation here. I'm Ivan. I'm from Yogyakarta, Indonesia. I'm doing stuff with scrap glass. Okay, so this is just to give a little to show where I live. And by the way, sorry, my English is not really good. So Indonesia is an archipelago. So I live in Java Island here. Yeah, a small city called Yogyakarta. This city is very small. It's still a mix between modern and traditional lifestyle here. So it's a small city, and we still have king here. The king is act as a governor in our city. We have this traditional music instrument. We have this traditional dance. So if you want to go to the beach, it's also only about 2 hours from the city. And at the north of this city where I live, yeah, Floor already mentioned about volcano in Bali. We also have volcano here in Yogyakarta, in my city, and now is erupting actually, but it's still safe here. It's 10 kilometer, 30 kilometers from my place. Okay, but what people do here in Yogyakarta. Well, people also make a lot of things here. Since I was young, I was always curious about how people make stuff. In Yogyakarta, people produce things more like in small scale production. So usually I go around and I'm looking for a place where people make something, and I found this place is only metal casting, brass metal casting. They're making Jesus out of a bullet shell, I think. So interesting stuff here you can find in Jogja. We also, this city is also known by their handicraft. This is silver for jewelry and souvenir. I always interested in making stuff using flame. And that is the more the before is more about the traditional and production craft in Yogyakarta. But here in Yogyakarta, we also have this what is it called? More contemporary art scene also. So this is one of the yearly art event in Yogyakarta. So this is called Art Jog, Art in Yogyakarta. This is a yearly art bazaar in Yogyakarta. They usually make a big installation here in front of the gallery. This is giant head made from clay. They dig up the front of the gallery. So Yogyakarta is mix of a lot of things here. So how I learn about glass. I learned about glass from this guy. This is my teacher. His name is Mr. Nario. He's a scientific glass blower, maybe the oldest in Yogyakarta. And he made all the tools by himself. This is his workshop. This is the torch that he made. And I learned from him, I learned the basic of glass and fire from him. So this is his torch, and all the equipment is made by himself. Because here in Yogyakarta, in Indonesia, we don't really have access or knowledge about flame working, lamp working, or about glass work here in Yogyakarta. So this is the first person who I learned a lot from him, and he gave me his torch, this one, so I can learn and do my experiment at my place. So this is the last picture that I have with him. And I also go to the East Java, like Floor said. I heard about people making glass beads, and I go there. I want to know about what kind of tools and what kind of material that they have. And I also already learned a little bit about glass making, and I know that we have to anneal so the glass that we make is not exploding. I found this in East Java, in Jombang. They're making this glass bead very big, and they don't have any annealer. Okay, I go there with my friends, and you can see everything is simple. Everything is not in a fancy studio there. They all make their own glass rod from scrap glass. Yeah, this is the glass rod that they make. They make by themselves using scrap glass, and also for the coloring, they mix it with the stringer beads. They melt it together, and then they pull it, become a glass rod. So after that, I do my own experiment. So this is the torch that my teacher made for me. It was made from welding tools and pipes, and he only blew it actually, but it's working. Yeah. And this is what I made. Yeah. This is 10 years ago. I only can make a very, very short glass rod. I do it like almost like in a few months. Yeah, I was teaching myself to make a glass rod. And then what can I do with that glass rod? So I was to experiment and do the simplest thing that I can do. Yeah, make connection and burn it, and then pull it, and then cut it, and repeat it repeatedly. And then suddenly it became a tree, became a branch, something like that. Just the simple things that I can do with that, because I only have the tools, yeah, the torch. Okay, then I was like always doing it, or almost like maybe a year. So some people asking me in the Facebook, can you make anything else besides trees? Yeah, and then other friends also saw my work, and he interested in what I do, and then he asked me to join an exhibition. So this is what the other things about Yogyakarta. The art community is very fluid. So here I am in my first exhibition, just showing a my simple technique of connecting and pull it, something like that. And this is really, really far away from the glass area. This is actually a bio art exhibition. And then I make this one. And then I post it in the, maybe some of you know about this online gallery, DeviantArt. I post this in the DeviantArt, and I get a really, really wonderful response. Some of them from Germany writing about my work in her blog and everything, and I was suddenly known that, oh, not many people here in Indonesia doing glass art and using scrap glass. And here I am a few years later, I was invited to Singapore to show what I do. But you know, Singapore, you cannot put torch everywhere and make fire, yeah, you get arrested. So that I was using only a few small match to do a demo. And then back to Indonesia, I was invited to join an exhibition with bigger audience. This is the first time I was exhibiting in a big exhibition. It's a group exhibition actually. But then people here in the audience is always asking, what is it made from? Is it acrylic? Is it plastic? And then I realized here in Indonesia, not many people working with glass. Glass as an art medium is rarely used here in Indonesia. So then I made this guy. So this piece will explain themselves what they are made from. And then I also have the opportunity to do a collaboration with artist from Austria. This is Mr. Johan Traar. He's a very great guy. So we do the collaboration. Yeah, you can see with very limited tools that we have here. So this is what we make together. This is he make an abstract glass drawing, he called it. And yeah, Yogyakarta is crazy. We have this crazy art scene, so you can do almost anything here. So this actually an exhibition collaboration with him for a drive-through exhibition. So he asked people to drove their motorbike inside the gallery. Yeah, and then this is my biggest artwork. This is commission work for a hotel here in the Yogyakarta. This is 100% made from scrap glass. The green glass is made from the scrap glass beer bottle from the hotel. And until now, I'm still doing my experiment, experiment doing beads also, doing jewelry. And this is what Floor said before about this. This is my experiment. I'm also interested in doing mixed media. So this is the contradiction of stone, the material and the glass. Oops, sorry. This is a portable torch, a butane portable torch. Usually I use this to do a live demo, so I didn't have to bring the oxygen or everything. So usually I was invited to show what I'm doing to other people. So people sometimes they invite me to elementary school, in the festival, or also in the village. So thank you very much for this opportunity to show what I do here in Indonesia. And this is really great because now I have knowledge more about glass and beads. And thank you. Thank you.
You are very welcome, Ivan. We're getting, I think on your iPhone you can't see everything. Oh, so now I'm double. You can stop sharing your screen. There you go. And then you can be on screen. So if you have any questions for Ivan, let them know. We're getting a lot of response. I suggest even that you check the chat in a bit, because there's a lot of compliments coming your way about the beauty of your work. I do have to say that I cheated a little bit, as in this is a bead symposium, and as you can see, Ivan can make beads, but he doesn't really make beads that much. But I just love his work so much, and I think it's fascinating, and the world needs to see it. So that's why I decided to have you in here. I'm just kind of like secretly put together my dream panel of artists and researchers and important bead people that I wanted to hear from, and I just put them together for everyone. And you certainly were and are one of mine. And Sherry already says in the chat that they are glad that I brought you on. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. So lots of compliments. People say thank you for cheating, Floor. Some person has suggested that your technique would lend itself really well for also making feather shapes. So that could be something to try. But maybe it doesn't work for you at all, because you get to do whatever you want to do. Do you have any plans of what you're working on at the moment?
At the moment, I'm preparing my solo exhibition. It will be in November. So now it's like I'm trying to do some I don't know, the models. So hopefully I can find funding in this pandemic moment. Is a little bit hard here.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I remember you when we sat down when I was in your studio, and I asked, would you not want to work with other glass? Because as someone who loves different colors, I like having a lot of colors available. I remember you telling me that you really enjoy the fact that you can make something that is as intricate as what you do, but make it with simple things. Just use what you have. And that also reminds me, somebody was asking about the rock, the piece of stone that is in the piece that you experimented and that I have. And I also thought that that was a very special stone. But then you told me it just came from the street. So I think it just speaks to the fact that you like making special things with simple means.
Yeah. That's what I do, because using the things that I can find around me, because I would not like make things if something I have to wait it's come, or if I have to buy, or I need more effort to do it, and it feels like it's gonna strict me from my creativity, something like that. So I just try to do with what I have, and it's what I did.
Okay, so for now, I'm going to let you go and say thank you very much for sharing your art with us. We have put a link to, I think, your Instagram page in the chat, so everyone go check out Ivan's work. And I know I'm planning ahead, but hey, if the pandemic allows it, I am there in November. I will be watching your solo exhibition, and we will be making some art together. So I hope to see you live sometime soon. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And you can, there we go. So we are on to our final presentation with this great variety of artists and researchers. We have come to Nico. So Nico, if you could turn on your video and your sound so we can see you. There you are. So I'm going to share the story of how you came across my radar. I think it was either Instagram or Facebook. And I saw you started working on a very movable, wiggable piece of beadwork. And I'm like, what is that? So it was your first start, I think, at one of what's now often called the egg tray in geometric beadwork. And then I learned more about you and the amazing work that you do, which clearly is more than meets the eye. and I could go on about that because I think you are someone who builds bridges between different people, but also between a tradition and modern artwork. And that's why I think you were a great person to finish this symposium, which in the end was all about community. So tell us more.
Well, Ani, everybody, hello. I'm geometric beadwork artist Nico Williams. I'm based in Yogyakarta right now, which is known as Montreal to you all. And it's an honor to be invited to this Bead Symposium. Thank you, Floor, for putting this all together. And thank you to everybody coming. It's like great to be spending time with you during the pandemic together, all together, sort of through this online space. And so I wanted to present on today sort of the exhibition that I'm a part of right now in Montreal at the Contemporary Art Gallery in Montreal. So over the past year, well, the past 2 years, I've been inspired sort of by objects that I've been finding. And I use beads sort of as a tool to link them or like communicate and interact with materials that I sort of run into. So I set up the exhibition in September, but because of the pandemic, the public hasn't been able to see it yet, which it opens on the 8th this month. So people will finally be able to see these objects. So Floor, could you just share the video with the group right now?
And I'm going to share it and it'll be on full screen. And then when you want me to pause it, let me know.
Oh, yeah.
Where are we going? We are going here. And then, and here we go. And Nico, you have muted yourself, but please explain to us what we are watching.
So right now you're watching sort of the installation that we were doing during the setup. And
we are setting up the show.
That's my studio assistant right now, sort of explaining. And there I am mounting the works to the wall. Again, I'd like to apologize about the quality of the video. We're just using our smartphone right now. And yeah, documentation has been a little bit of tricky getting into there. And then like during like the studio practice, I don't necessarily take pictures. So this is a beaded Indian status card in a wallet. Oh my goodness, the quality of this video. Again, I apologize. I'll share some images with you shortly.
And we will put a link to the original video.
Yes. So you can sort of see how I was experimenting with mounting these. I'll be screen sharing soon so you can see more HD images. And these are Mon Cachet scratch tickets found at the Dépanneur in Montreal. I'm sure you have scratch tickets in Europe too. They're all over the world, right?
They are lottery tickets.
Yes. Okay. So you can see how I've sort of started experimenting with how beadwork is experienced in, okay, and then, wait, oh, sorry, I'm screen sharing the wrong folder. This is some of my older work that you can see right there. There's me experimenting with neon and beadwork right there. I'm just trying to open up the other.
We had everything go fairly smoothly technically so far, so this just makes sense. You need at least one where it's not going smoothly.
Yeah.
To have people understand that it's not always easy.
All right, so there we go. I don't know if you can all see this right now. All right.
We can see
So is
this.
this full screen now? All right.
This works.
All right. So this is my exhibition at the Montreal Museum of Contemporary Art. And the work right here that you have in front of you is called Play. And it's sort of to represent a VHS screen that you would sort of connect to on the television in the past, like in the 90s, because I was sort of thinking about identity and experience, like Indigenous experience through identity and film. So I don't know if you are familiar with the material wampum.
I am, but probably not everyone else is.
So wampum is the purple material here, and it's a hand-carved shell. And I've sort of collaborated them with size 10 delicas. I don't know if I can zoom in there. Yes, is that zooming in?
Yes.
Yes. So right here, this is the wampum, and then the blue is just the size 10 delicas. And I've sort of made a standalone sculpture that is just there out in the open. And I've asked the museum to have none of the beadwork under glass so the work could breathe. I think it's really important experiencing beadwork, being able to touch, being able to see it out in the open rather than necessarily put it under glass, which a lot of Indigenous artwork is sort of placed when you go into spaces. So I'll go to the next work. Here's another work from the exhibition, and it's a beaded Indian status card, which the government of Canada gives to Indigenous people. And I placed it in a bison leather wallet. So you can sort of just like experience it again when you're walking around the space. And I beaded this as a self-portrait. I like to use beads and just sort of like approach it like how a painter will use paint, you know. I'll just use it to make objects that I really am attracted to. And then right here is a series called Fry Bread. And these are labels that are used in fry bread. I don't know, have you ever had fry bread before?
I've had fry bread in Tucson, so it's perfectly suitable here.
Yes, it's so great. It's so delicious. And let me try, again, I apologize.
For those who don't know, fry bread is basically just like fried bread dough.
Yeah, so I chose these beaded labels from like the grocery store, and I beaded them in 24 karat gold delicas. So this is like the lined, and that's like pure lard that's used to fry the bread. And then this is magic baking powder with like a 24 karat gold dyed bead. And this is Windsor salt with a blue dyed bead. And then this is Robin Hood flour, which a lot of like Indigenous communities swear by it up here in Canada. So I wanted just to sort of bring these like commodities in front of us, so we look at them and we start to question the relationship of these sort of ingredients that are like given to us in exchange for what we used to like sort of gather and eat off the land. I hope that makes sense. Again, I'm sorry.
Well, we have a few questions in the chat that have to do with, first of all, I know the answer, but we had one of the first questions which I didn't introduce you as such. You are of the First Nations?
Oh yes, I'm Ojibwe.
Yes.
I'm Ojibwe
And
Yeah.
we had a few. We had a question regarding the identity card, what that is about. And I think we're getting a few more political discussions going on in the chat about that. But perhaps you could explain what it is and why it encouraged you to make it into beads.
Well, a lot of these, sorry for jumping in again. Canadians always apologizing right now as I'm apologizing. So the identity card is sort of a little figure. Let's go back to it. Is this full screen now? Like what I'm showing?
It's close enough. Yeah, you're good.
Oh, great. Okay. So right here is an angry picture of me with my hair sort of popping up all over the place. There's my identity number. These are my numbers that I was given to from the government. And then I wrote NDN. It sort of looks like an O, but you can play around with that. Indian status. And then I'm shooting the finger here, and I've sort of hid it under the bison skin. I like to play around with work, and it is a serious piece that sort of is confronting the government, but it's also just sort of playful at the same time. I've always been attracted to beads as a material since I was young. I started working with loom in grade 6. I remember interacting with the materials and then sort of falling upon peyote beadwork later on. So let me just get through here. Back to the lotto ticket. So when I started beading with scratch tickets, it started with a bingo ticket that was red. And because of the pandemic, I sort of had time to sort of stretch it out in my studio since I had more time. And for like over the summer, my studio team and I, we beaded about over 70,000 beads leading up to the exhibition to get it ready. And having the space, let's go to the installation. There's one of the bingo tickets. I'm just trying to get to the, so this was the very first ticket here, was the red series. And then I was able to do the word searches, which is like hidden words, mon caché. And in these tickets, I was able to sort of hide indigenous histories in that scratch away grid. Yeah. So when you get to experience the work in person, there's words in there that really talk about the history between colonial and indigenous communities. And then I'm going to try to stop sharing for a minute. Okay, is it just my face now?
Yes, it's just you and me.
Great. So over the pandemic, I worked on a couple projects with people online. I was working with the Fee Foundation in the Old Port in Montreal, and online we started to bead small swatches of sort of like different locations of the history of Montreal. And then I got them to sort of send in the work to me. And then I started to attach it in my studio. And then together we like made sort of this like aerial map that sort of shows the shifting land in Montreal and like the historic like transformations that happened. Like this used to be a waterway right here. It was like land before, and then they blew it up sort of so people could get into the Great Lakes for trade. So that's sort of this mouth here. And then there's also waterways that have shifted on the land too. And then the gold here is like highways and like routes that are still there today.
So how many people worked on this piece?
20.
Wow.
Yes.
So it's art made by a community.
No, it's actually made by a lot of people. It's made
No,
by.
but I mean, they came together. I feel if you make one piece in the end that comes together, that makes you a community. But maybe that's just me.
Oh yeah, it's like a virtual community, right? Like we're all together and we made it, and it's so great to see the light and how it interacts with it.
I think that's the main difference between doing like a painting or a cloth piece and then beads, because beads, it sparkles, it moves, it shines.
Yes. And then actually one of the participants put a design into it. So it's funny to see like the work done by, a lot of these people were first time beaders also.
Wow.
And so it's really great to work with community and just interact with people. And then another thing I'll show before tuning out is being inspired by objects found on the ground. So I found this bag here on my way to the studio, and then I was inspired by the blue in the snow. And then so I've started making these like bags with the silhouettes of the trees and the snow.
Wow.
Sorry, I hope that I filmed everything. I just like, thank you.
I think it's not as well planned as some of the other presentation, but I think the way your mind works really comes across, and I think the way your mind works in presenting probably represents itself in your work as well.
Yeah, I don't know, with beadwork, I'm just so attracted to the material. So,
so I have a question that may be considered a rude question, but because I'm a bead worker as well, I feel like I get to ask the question because I get asked it sometimes as well. If you're spending so much time with a piece, either you yourself or with help of other people, you're not going for the easy, pretty things.
No.
Why is that?
Again, like right now, I'm inspired by this J cloth, which is like a reusable cloth. Do you guys have these in the Netherlands?
Yeah, we call them the duizend dingen doekje, which sounds funny, but it's like the thing, the cloth that you can do 1,000 things with.
So
there you go.
now, again, like I don't know, I sort of just like get attracted to objects and make it, you know?
I mean, a lot of my work comes from inspiration from either paper or cloth. I mean, the piece I'm wearing now is inspired by those paper garlands that people make, and I made it into beads. So I totally get that. So
I think it's just like,
I'm going through a few questions because we are starting to run out of time, and I could talk to you for hours, and I would love to. And we will get together and arrange for that. Again, that was supposed to happen this last July. So we have two questions that I want to make sure to ask you. One is the size bead. I think you're all using size 11 delicas, isn't it?
Oh, I use a variety of materials. So like the tickets were done in like size 11s, and then the bags are done in size 10s, and then when you're doing details, size 15s.
Oh, size 15s delicas are hell.
Or if you do lace, size 15s. So like, again, I am studying sculpture, so like I approach like the practice as like sculpture. So it's like, if I'm going to you know, make a box of Cheerios, I'm going to measure it out. Like it's really about the experience of the object. Yeah.
And we have one more question, and that is the piece you were wearing, the medallion.
Yes.
Is that something that you can show us up close and tell us about?
Oh my gosh, yes. So this is Jean Marshall. and she is from the Ojibwe community. So I love to wear my nation's work always, because a lot of like the traditional practice in Indigenous art is super important, and I also bead some traditional work. Like here's like something I've traditionally done. So I just like to, give honor to that, and really attracted to beads and material. Yeah.
Thank you so much. As someone already mentioned, one of the people in the chat who said, we want a whole webinar with just Nico. We want to hear more. And another one who says that, so I might have to bother you again. But either way, again, in the chat, we've put a link to your Instagram and your website, so you can follow Nico because he does share a lot of what he does. And for now, Nico, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So we are going to wrap this up. Wow, that was very cool. I'm kind of like in that zone where you're like just checking if we got the right. Yeah, we got the right one up. I'm like, wow, there's so much inspiration, so much information going around in my head. It's like I wanna go to my studio and bead and read and melt glass and all of that. So there's a few people that I seriously want to thank for tonight. First of all, it's our wonderful presenters. They've all done a great job. I love how they've all done it their own way. I think the variety was amazing. So thank you so much for joining us. As I said, this is all a volunteer effort. We have no money to spend on the presenters, which I would love to have been able to. And in Tucson, when we did it live, at least they would still get like Dutch cookies, and I can't even give you Dutch cookies now. I shipped something to the US in December and it still hasn't arrived, so I'm not sending you cookies, I'm sorry. So, and also I want to thank, and we've put links in the chat to all of these as well, to Ornament Magazine, the Sonoran Glass School. Sonoran Glass School is actually not in the links, but USO, check them out. They are a non-profit glass school, and the ethnographic group is a great place to look at all your beads. So thank you so much to everyone. If you are not fed up, there's two things to do. One is go to all of these links, read more, study more, look at all the links of all the presenters that we had today. We'll be sharing this video on Facebook. These are a few wonderful sources of information, so I suggest, there we go, Sonoran Glass School is in the chat as well. We have the beadsymposium.com, which is basically our Facebook page, so keep that in mind. Ornament Magazine was pointed out before, wonderful magazine, has been going strong for decades with fascinating information. The Sonoran Glass School right here, the ethnographic group for all your old bead needs. Beadcollective.net, great place to share information. Beadmuseum.com is my personal website where you can download my different books on bead history for free and have a look at sample cards. Then we have the ISGB, the International Society of Glass Bead Makers, again, a great resource for bead makers. Do join them. And we have the website of beadresearch.org with, again, a lot of free online sources. So if you are still not fed up with us, there is the possibility to join the link. We call it the after party, which is available. We have a link to it now in the chat. After I close this webinar, I will open that one up and I will randomly throw you into groups to chat with fellow people who have watched the same program. We have a limited number of 100 in the after party, so usually not everyone joins up, but if it's full, then you get to have an after party with yourself by going to all the links and looking at all the information. So A final thank you to everyone. Do give any responses or any final questions that you have in the next coming days on our Facebook page. Do support the artists, the researchers and the organizations that we've mentioned. It is still possible, again, also posted somewhere in the chat that's going fast now, is the link to make this for PayPal, to make this and other bead symposiums possible in the future. I'm happy. We're in the middle of a snowstorm. Tomorrow we have code red here, which means I get to spend another beautiful day with my sweetheart because I cannot go home because I live elsewhere, but there will be no trains running. So I can then sit, relax, and maybe start watching the video so I can take it all in again. Thank you, everyone. I will be closing this webinar in a minute. Thank you so much, and see most of you, if not all of you, in the after party.